The dark side within us is often misunderstood. Many see it as something to be feared, suppressed, or even denied, but in reality, it is simply the part of us that carries our suppressed emotions, past wounds, fears, and insecurities. It's the side that holds our anger, jealousy, resentment, and even our deepest desires that we may not always feel comfortable admitting. However, mastering your dark side does not mean erasing it. It means understanding it, working with it, and ultimately transforming it into a source of strength rather than weakness. One of the most powerful ways to do this is through shadow work. Now, shadow work doesn't mean diving into negativity and staying there. It means becoming aware of the thoughts and emotions that lie beneath the surface. Think of it this way. Every time we push down a negative emotion, whether it's sadness, frustration, or guilt, it doesn't just disappear. It lingers in our subconscious, shaping our decisions, reactions, and even relationships without us realizing it. For example, if someone grew up being told they weren't good enough, that belief can manifest in adulthood as self-doubt, procrastination, or even self-sabotage. They might hold themselves back from opportunities, not because they aren't capable, but because an old voice from the past still echoes in their mind. Facing our shadows means bringing these hidden aspects into the light. It means asking ourselves tough questions. Why does this trigger me? Why do I feel this way? What belief is driving my actions? It requires honesty and courage because sometimes we don't like the answers we find, but this is where growth happens. The moment we stop running from our darkness and start listening to it, we gain control over it. Instead of reacting impulsively out of anger, we learn to pause, reflect, and respond with intention. Instead of avoiding challenges out of fear, we recognize fear as a sign of growth rather than a roadblock. More importantly, understanding your dark side allows you to reclaim your power. Many people believe that their darkness makes them weak, but in truth it holds incredible strength. Anger, when controlled, fuels determination. Fear, when understood, sharpens awareness. Pain, when processed, cultivates wisdom. The key is not to let these emotions control you, but to learn how to channel them in ways that serve you. Mastering your dark side is not about being perfect. It's about being whole. When you embrace every part of yourself, the light and the dark, you become unshakable. You no longer live in fear of your emotions or your past. Instead, you use them as tools for transformation. And that is where true power begins. Shadow work is one of the most powerful tools for self-mastery, yet it's often misunderstood. Many people go through life avoiding their deeper emotions, suppressing their fears, and pretending that their past wounds don't affect them. But the truth is, what we ignore doesn't disappear. It controls us from the background. Shadow work is the process of bringing these hidden parts of ourselves into the light, not to judge them, but to understand them. It's about acknowledging the aspects of ourselves that we may have buried out of shame, fear, or pain, and learning to integrate them in a way that empowers us rather than holds us back. The reason this work is so important is because our shadows influence our lives whether we realize it or not. Think about moments when you've overreacted to a situation, felt an unexplained resistance to something good, or sabotaged your own progress. These are often signs of an unresolved shadow. Maybe it's a childhood experience that made you believe you're not worthy of success, or an old emotional wound that causes you to lash out in anger. Until we confront these hidden patterns, they continue to shape our thoughts, emotions, and actions in ways that limit us. Shadow work begins with self-awareness. It requires us to ask difficult questions. Why do I feel triggered by certain people? Why do I repeat the same negative patterns? What fears am I avoiding? At first, these questions might be uncomfortable because they force us to see parts of ourselves that we don't like. But the truth is, those parts are not our enemies. They are simply unprocessed emotions that need our attention. The moment we stop running from them, we start reclaiming our power. The next step is acceptance. Many people resist shadow work because they feel ashamed of their emotions. They think that feeling anger, jealousy, or insecurity makes them weak. But emotions are not weaknesses, they are signals. Anger might be a sign that you need to set boundaries. Jealousy might reveal a deeper desire that you've been neglecting. Fear might be pointing you toward an opportunity for growth. When you stop labeling these feelings as bad and start seeing them as teachers, you gain control over them instead of letting them control you. But shadow work isn't just about understanding, it's about transformation. Once you recognize your hidden fears and limiting beliefs, you have the power to rewrite them. Instead of being driven by past pain, you can choose new beliefs and actions that align with who you want to become. You can turn self-doubt into confidence, anger into motivation, and fear into wisdom. This is how you move from being a victim of your past to the master of your future. The process isn't always easy, but it is necessary. When you commit to shadow work, you break free from the patterns that have been holding you back. You stop reacting out of old wounds and start responding with clarity and strength. And ultimately, you become a more whole, authentic, and empowered version of yourself. Darkness is often seen as something negative, something to fear, suppress, or escape from. But the truth is, darkness holds power. It carries the raw energy of our emotions, our struggles, and our deepest challenges. The problem is not the darkness itself, but how we choose to deal with it. When we resist it, it controls us. When we embrace it, we can transform it into strength. Think about a time when you faced adversity, perhaps heartbreak, failure, or rejection. In those moments, it's easy to feel defeated, to believe that pain is a sign of weakness. But if you look deeper, you'll realize that struggle is what forces growth. Just like a muscle needs resistance to become stronger, we need challenges to discover what we're truly capable of. Every difficulty carries a lesson, and every wound holds the potential for wisdom if we're willing to face it. One of the most powerful ways to transform darkness into strength is by shifting perspective. Instead of seeing pain as something that happens to you, see it as something that happens for you. Every setback teaches resilience. Every failure reveals new possibilities. Every difficult emotion is an opportunity to understand yourself better. When you stop resisting and start learning, your darkest moments become your greatest teachers. Another key is harnessing emotion as fuel. Anger, frustration, even fear. All of these can be destructive if left unchecked, but they can also be powerful motivators. Anger can drive you to take action. Fear can sharpen your awareness and push you beyond your comfort zone. Even sadness, when embraced, can deepen your empathy and connection with others. The key is learning to channel these emotions rather than letting them consume you. Instead of allowing pain to turn into bitterness, use it to build strength. Instead of letting fear hold you back, use it to push forward with even more determination. This transformation doesn't happen overnight. It requires self-awareness, patience, and a willingness to sit with discomfort. But the more you do it, the more you realize that nothing outside of you has the power to break you. You are not your pain. You are not your past. You are the person who chooses what to do with it. Mastering your dark side is not about eliminating it. It's about owning it. When you learn to take control of your emotions, when you use struggle as fuel rather than excuse, you become unstoppable. And that is where true power begins. Emotions are powerful. They can drive us towards success or lead us into self-destruction. The difference lies in how we manage them. Many people believe that emotions are something that just happens to them, as if they have no control. But the truth is, emotional intelligence is a skill, one that allows us to understand, regulate, and use our emotions effectively, rather than being controlled by them. And at the heart of emotional intelligence is self-control, the ability to respond with intention rather than react impulsively. Think about a time when you let your emotions dictate your actions. Maybe you lashed out in anger, made a decision out of fear, or allowed frustration to cloud your judgment. In those moments, emotions took control, and the results were often regret or unnecessary conflict. Now imagine if you had paused, taken a breath, and chosen how to respond instead of reacting. That's the power of self-restraint. It doesn't mean suppressing emotions or pretending they don't exist. It means recognizing them, understanding where they come from, and making a conscious choice about what to do with them. One of the key aspects of emotional intelligence is self-awareness. Before you can control an emotion, you must first recognize it. Pay attention to patterns in your thoughts and behaviors. What situations trigger strong reactions? What underlying fears or insecurities are driving those emotions? When you become aware of these patterns, you gain the ability to disrupt them. Instead of letting anger explode, you can channel it into assertiveness. Instead of allowing fear to paralyze you, you can use it as motivation to prepare and push forward. Another important aspect is learning to regulate emotions in real time. When you feel yourself getting overwhelmed, take a step back, breathe, ask yourself, what am I feeling and why? What is the most constructive way to handle this? Developing simple habits like pausing before reacting, reframing negative thoughts, and practicing mindfulness can help you stay in control, even in the most intense situations. But emotional intelligence isn't just about managing negative emotions, it's also about using emotions strategically. Confidence, passion, and determination are all emotions that, when harnessed, can drive success. When you understand your emotional triggers, you can shift your mindset and use those emotions to fuel you rather than hold you back. Mastering emotional intelligence and self-control is a lifelong practice, but it's one of the most valuable skills you can develop. When you control your emotions, you control your decisions. And when you control your decisions, you control your life. Self-sabotage is one of the most frustrating struggles we face. It's when we get in our own way, whether consciously or unconsciously, preventing ourselves from achieving what we truly want. We set goals but procrastinate. We crave success but fear it at the same time. We push away good opportunities, make excuses, or allow negative thoughts to convince us we're not good enough. And often, we don't even realize we're doing it. Breaking free from self-sabotage starts with understanding where it comes from and learning how to rewire the patterns that keep us stuck. At its core, self-sabotage is usually rooted in fear. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, or even fear of success. Many people don't realize that success can be just as intimidating as failure. It brings responsibility, change, and the possibility of losing what we've gained. So instead of moving forward, we unconsciously hold ourselves back. We tell ourselves, I'm not ready yet. What if I fail? What if I'm not good enough? These thoughts create hesitation, and hesitation turns into inaction. The first step to breaking free is self-awareness. Pay attention to your behaviors and patterns. Ask yourself, where do I keep repeating the same mistakes? What excuses do I make? What fears come up when I think about success? Often self-sabotage operates like a hidden program running in the background of our minds, shaping our decisions without us realizing it. But once you bring it into the light, you gain the power to change it. The next step is challenging those limiting beliefs. If you've been telling yourself for years that you're not capable, not smart enough, or not deserving, you've likely internalized those beliefs as truth. But beliefs are just thoughts we've repeated enough times to accept as reality. You can rewrite them. Instead of thinking, I'm not ready, tell yourself, I'll never be fully ready, but I can start anyway. Instead of thinking, what if I fail? Ask, what if I succeed? The more you challenge these thoughts, the weaker they become. Then comes action. The best way to break self-sabotage is to prove to yourself that you can do the things you fear. Take small steps. If you procrastinate because you fear failure, commit to just 5 minutes of focused effort. If you avoid opportunities out of self-doubt, say yes to something that pushes you out of your comfort zone. Action builds momentum, and momentum builds confidence. Breaking free from self-sabotage isn't about being perfect. It's about being intentional. Every time you choose growth over fear, progress over excuses, you reclaim control. And the more you do it, the less power your old patterns will have over you. Perfection is an illusion that so many of us chase, believing that once we reach it, we will finally feel worthy, successful, or at peace. But the more we strive for perfection, the more we realize it is never enough. There is always something to improve, something that could have been done better, something that isn't quite right. And in that endless pursuit, we often lose sight of what truly matters: balance. Balance means accepting both our strengths and our weaknesses, our light and our dark, our successes and our failures. It means understanding that growth doesn't come from being flawless, but from learning, adapting, and embracing the full spectrum of who we are. When we hold ourselves to impossible standards, we set ourselves up for frustration, self-doubt, and burnout. We become so focused on avoiding mistakes that we miss opportunities. We become so obsessed with proving our worth that we forget we are already enough. Think about the times when you've hesitated to take action because you were afraid it wouldn't be perfect. Maybe you held back from starting a new project, pursuing a goal, or sharing your ideas because you feared criticism. But perfection is not the key to success. Consistency and self-acceptance are. Some of the most successful people in the world didn't get there because they never made mistakes, but because they kept going despite them. They understood that setbacks and imperfections are not failures. They are stepping stones. Embracing balance also means recognizing that we are not just one thing. We are not always strong and we are not always weak. We are not always confident and we are not always doubtful. We are a mix of experiences, emotions, and contradictions, and that's okay. The goal is not to be perfect, but to be whole. To acknowledge every part of ourselves without judgment. To strive for growth without the unrealistic expectation of flawlessness. When you shift your mindset from perfection to balance, you free yourself from unnecessary pressure. You allow yourself to grow naturally without the weight of unrealistic expectations. You stop seeing mistakes as proof of failure and start seeing them as part of the journey. And most importantly, you give yourself permission to be human. We often think of our dark side as something to suppress, something shameful or dangerous. But the truth is, our dark side holds power. It carries our deepest emotions, our rawest energy, and our strongest instincts. The key is not to deny it, but to direct it, to use it as a force for growth, purpose, and strength, rather than destruction. When we learn to harness it, our dark side becomes a source of resilience, passion, and transformation. Think about emotions like anger, fear, or pain. Left unchecked, they can be destructive. But when controlled and channeled, they become fuel. Anger, for example, can turn into determination. Many great leaders, artists, and visionaries have used their anger not to lash out, but to fight for change. They took their frustration and used it to drive action. Fear, when embraced, sharpens awareness. It forces us to prepare, to stay sharp, to push beyond our comfort zones. Even pain, though difficult, teaches us resilience. Some of the strongest people are those who have endured suffering, but chose to grow from it instead of being broken by it. The key to using your dark side for good is awareness. Instead of letting your emotions control you, step back and ask, how can I use this energy in a way that serves me? If you feel anger, instead of reacting impulsively, channel it into something productive, into a workout, a project, a goal. If you feel fear, instead of running from it, ask what it's trying to teach you. Often fear points to areas where we need to grow. If you feel pain, instead of letting it define you, use it to build empathy, wisdom, and strength. Another way to transform darkness into good is through purpose. Many of the most impactful people in history, those who fought for justice, who created groundbreaking art, who built movements, were driven by something deep within, often by struggles they had personally faced. Your own hardships, your battles, and even your inner demons can become the driving force behind something meaningful. Instead of seeing your dark side as a weakness, see it as a tool. Mastering your dark side doesn't mean letting it control you, nor does it mean ignoring it. It means understanding its power and directing it towards something greater. When you do that, you no longer fear your darkness. You own it. And that is where real strength begins. Mastering your dark side is not about eliminating it. It's about understanding, embracing, and transforming it into a source of strength. Your fears, pain, and hidden emotions are not your enemies. They are tools for growth if you learn to use them wisely. Emotional intelligence, self-control, and balance are key to harnessing this power without letting it consume you. Break free from self-sabotage, channel your struggles into purpose, and use your darkness for good. When you accept every part of yourself, the light and the dark, you become whole, resilient, and unstoppable. True mastery begins when you own your power completely.